Please welcome Blaine Hitzfield.
All right, so how many of you guys are here, guys and gals are here for the first time attending the Grassfed Exchange? Wow. As I was preparing this presentation, I was just thinking about, I think it was 6 years ago that my dad and my brother Blake and I think it was just three of us were, it was a cold February week, and we were headed out to Yankton, South Dakota. How many of you were in Yankton, South Dakota for the first inaugural Grassfed Exchange event? There was a lot of excitement in there, just like there is now. And so I've had the opportunity to attend each and every exchange. I think this is our 7th one. And I can say with sincerity that this event has been, compared to any other events that we've attended, has really made an impact on our farming operation. Really affected the trajectory of our farming operation. So I'm excited to be here and hopefully give back. A little bit about Seven Sons. We have 550 acres of mainly pasture. There's some hay rotation in there yet. We grow some non-GMO crops for feed for our chickens and pigs. Roughly there's 250 acres of kind of permanent pasture. And we are a pasture-based food production operation. As Josh mentioned there, we 80% or 90% of what we produce goes direct to the consumer. We're very fortunate to be supported by a group of about 4,000 very passionate families and individuals that support our farm. And we have a Metropolitan Buying Club network that I'll share more about here as we talk about some marketing. But a lot of times people want to know, is there really 7 sons? And I'll just get it out of the way. There is. That's why we had to have the farm, so we could all afford to eat. It's a big group of people, and when people hear there's 7 sons, the stereotypes start going wild. What are these? Are they Amish, Mennonite? None of the above. So I'll just leave it at that. We raise cattle on our farm. We raise chickens. We raise pigs. And the best thing we raise is lots of suspicions with all of our neighbors. Now, we've talked about, Alan was talking about last night, Josh was just talking about really the growth of this movement. So we transitioned to pasture-based agriculture about 15, 16 years ago. So we kind of had the opportunity to see this movement kind of evolve from its very infancy to what it is today. A couple of years ago, I remember reading in Alan Nation's Stockman Grass Farmer, Alan said that in 2004, according to his research, there were only 100 grazers in the U.S. that were both finishing and direct marketing grass-fed beef. We know there's thousands of us today. A lot of these numbers you've already heard. Alan talked about. But I think it's interesting to keep in mind that as much growth as we're seeing in this industry, the grass-fed sector, really this is all happening in an even larger context of a larger food movement. We have all 4 of the major beef packers now involved in grass-fed. I can remember when we were just getting started, it was definitely a fad and said it was going to go away. It's interesting to see where it is now today, and in the context of a larger food movement. This is a sign. I find this interesting. I put it up here for a number of reasons, just not to pick on anybody. We pass this sign going in and out of Chicago every week when we're delivering to our buying clubs. And so it's interesting now that everybody in the agriculture and food business this has their attention. They're now starting to invest in messaging and talking with consumers. And so I think it's pretty important that it's critical that right now as a family farm, as a lot of this really takes off, that as family farms we ask ourselves, what is our role going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? As these opportunities come at us, how specifically do we position ourselves to have a competitive advantage? What is our unique role? And I think that to answer that question, we really have to ask, what is at the heart of driving this consumer movement, this shift? I was at our state capitol last week talking to legislators, and I posed this same question as they were having an interim study talking about this movement and what, from a perspective of government, what it means. But I think for us to answer that question, what's at the heart of this movement, we can talk about, all the issues in the forefront of the media, but ultimately, I think we can all agree, whether it's the GMOs, environmental issues, we can all agree that more and more consumers are losing trust in our current food system. We can all agree on that. And I think as we ask that question and gain clarity, we begin to see where our unique opportunity is as family farms. Because I believe our conventional food system believes that their biggest problem is an ignorant, paranoid populace. But in reality, I think that our biggest problem as a conventional food and agriculture industry is that we've forgotten that trust and integrity just can't be purchased with a billboard. It can't be commoditized or commercialized. It can't be enforced or regulated. True trust and integrity comes when we have a relationship with people where there's a system of accountability and transparency. And I think the family farm is poised and positioned to take advantage and to fill that role. Our role, I believe, as a family farm is to restore trust in our food system. We're poised to do that. That's where our journey began 15 years ago with that mission. I'm going to share with you kind of three main components that we find very, very important in our business, kind of foundational aspects about what we're doing. And the first, because the question is, if we're going to restore trust and integrity to our food industry, how do we do that? What does it look like? And so the first thing I want to talk about is stacked enterprises, stacked production enterprises, what it means, what's the advantage to it. Top Producer Magazine a couple years ago came out with several, these are the average, or the size of your farm that you would need to be in a conventional system to be viable. 1,500 acres of corn if you're a corn farmer, wheat, 2,500 acres, dairy, right on down the line. And what's true about this is that there does need to be an element of scale to our businesses if we're going to be viable. But what's unfortunate with our commodity system, there's such a barrier to entry because of size. And as Alan was talking about last night, even if you're in the dairy business, you have a couple thousand cows, it doesn't mean you're still making money. So what Stacked Enterprises really allows us to do is to vertically scale without such a barrier to entry. Again, we're on 500 acres, and there's 10 of us full-time that operation supports. Some of us family, some of us non-family members. So the first enterprise that we got started with was grass-fed beef production. This was a major transition for us. Okay, up until this time, my parents had invested everything they had in their conventional farming operation, their conventional row crop, about 1,000 acres of row crops, and confinement hog production. We produced pork for IBP, which is Tyson, later was Tyson. So, everything they had invested in, their entire livelihoods were invested in that business. And through a set of circumstances relating to health and really a family health crisis, they got to the point where they didn't believe in what they were doing. And so that's a tough place to be. You've invested. My dad was probably 35 at the time. He had invested in everything that he had, both my parents. Their entire livelihoods were invested in this conventional farming business just to get to the point where they didn't believe in what they were doing. They took a leap of faith, sold the hogs, sold all the hogs. Cash flow out the door. Took what capital we had and started building infrastructure, converting the annual, and of course we're in corn and soybean country, all right, so high cash rent. Started converting that to perennial pastures. Took what little capital we had left and started installing some fencing infrastructure. Then we went into debt and bought cattle. Now, we were still excited about this transition at this point. But within about 2 to 3 years, we were nearly broke. Nearly broke. The learning curve was much steeper than we anticipated. And through the help of others, we eventually got some holes plugged on the ship, started to see some light at the end of the tunnel, but really at the end of the day, we realized we were producing a completely different product and we were still trying to market it on the commodity market. Okay, we didn't really have any vision for direct marketing when we got into beef cattle, pasture-based beef cattle. So, but eventually we started to have some customers that came out of the woodwork, and we slowly developed a small clientele. We knew that if we were going to produce a product of quality, we needed to find somebody that would find a customer base that appreciated that quality. And so as we developed the customer base, we began to realize that a customer base was going to be our most valuable asset, our farm's most valuable asset, because as we began to get customers, we realized that we were, for the first time in our farming career, we were becoming price makers instead of just price takers. And so we knew we had to further leverage that if we were going to find a profitable model. And our customers at that time were asking for a pasture-raised pork product. And so we had been out of the pork business for 10 years or more, and decided to get back into it. Not the way we were doing it, but on pasture. And hogs on pasture are completely different than hogs in confinement. And we first got started by buying some conventional sows, bred sows, turning them out to farrow and whenever and wherever they wanted, and that didn't work well. We spent a couple of years developing a system, but today we have heritage breeds hogs. We got about 40 sows on the farm. We're producing about 400 hogs a year that go through our direct marketing business, and eventually got through that learning curve of that enterprise. But we began to see the potential of stacking our enterprises combined with direct marketing. Now, this was probably 7 years after our transition. We were working with a company out of Indianapolis that had a home delivery business. They were buying our beef and pork. And they came to us and they wanted pasture-raised eggs. So up until that point, we always kind of had hens on the pasture, and the whole idea of the sanitation model. But it was never, we knew if it was going to be profitable with laying hens, we'd have to scale that business. And so when that customer came along, they asked for a supply. They wanted pallet quantities. So we scaled the business very quickly. We now, between two of my brothers, we now have 4,000 laying hens on the farm. It's the Joel Salatin style egg mobile. We call ours hen hotels. But it's a very efficient model. Many times I'm talking to farms and their pastured laying hen operation is the least profitable. For us, it's the most profitable. So let's talk a little bit about the economics. So for us, on our farm, this is a 12-month beef production cycle. This would be if you're purchasing a calf at 550 pounds, $254 a pound. So we have our land rent figured at $100. Now I told you we're in high value ground, so we're going to have some of the other operations cover some of the other costs as well. So let's just say the beef operation covers about $100 an acre. Some miscellaneous expenses. This is a very basic cost chart. But altogether, we're around a little over $2,000 in total cost to get this animal finished in a 12-month period. When we direct market that animal through our buying clubs, we see a gross return of a little over $3,000. Net profit comes out to about $1,000 per beef animal. On a per acre basis, we're figuring we're going to need at least 1.6 acres to finish that animal in a 12-month cycle. That works out to be $620 an acre. Not too bad. Of course, we had to get it marketed, right? So here we are on the pork production. We can finish a hog with these heritage hogs in about 8 months. We're figuring the hogs will need to pay at least $30 an acre for pasture rent, but hogs can get by in a lot lower fertile ground and less valuable ground. So going through the costs, we feed the hogs a non-GMO feed, sow maintenance, breeding, total cost of $491. So getting up there, that's a very generous, I made that high. Gross income about about $900 after we've direct marketed. That's at a $4.15 a pound hanging weight equivalent. Now we don't sell anything on our farm by the hanging weight, by the way. I'll address that later. But total hog net profit, $405 per acre, because we're figuring at least 2 hogs per acre in an 8-month cycle. So we're looking at $810 per acre net profit. Okay, the laying hens. Now this cost model is based on just 75 hens. Now you're not going to see, you're going to have some scale to make those economies work. But just for the sake of, we figure 75 hens per acre per year. So that's why I figured it this way. So again, we have the hens pay at least $100 land rent in our cost model. So between at least the beef and the hens and the hogs, we're able to pay at least $230 per acre in rent. A lot of non-GMO feed cost for this flock of hens. Our total cost on 75 hens for a 12-month period is a little under $3,000. Gross income close to $6,000. Total net profit, $3,000 per acre. Okay, now that's based on selling the eggs at $3.75 a dozen. So you can see how this value can really stack up, but there's a lot of dynamic components going on here, just not only in the production components, a lot of learning curves, a lot of things to get through, but we still have to get this product marketed. So total value per acre, $4,500 as we stack these up. Not bad. Again, we still have to get this product marketed. Allen Nation says the highest return for pure knowledge is, has been, and always will be marketing. So we can go to all this work and effort on the production side. But it's that last and final step of getting further up the value chain that really determines the value we get for the hard work and effort we put in. Actually, just to demonstrate that point, here is on the right column here in red is the net profit per acre we would be making in this production model if we were selling those same products on the commodity market. $285 versus $4,500. All right, so we know we have to get this product marketed if we're going to make this happen. So this is where this is where the challenging part comes in, right? I think it's important to think about the fact that when it comes to marketing these products, pasture-based foods, half the job is really done for us already. We have a product that's in high demand. We've established that already. And as producers, and as we think about what's driving consumers want to get as close as they can to where their food is produced. So that means the farmer. They want to buy it from the farmer. We have what's in demand. They want to buy it from us. The problem is there's barriers, right? Barriers. What are those barriers? I know there's direct marketers in here. What barriers do you face? Processing, logistics. Location. Mm-hmm.
Legislation.
Yeah, regulation. Ultimately, we have kind of, as we've dealt with these barriers over the years, we've kind of consolidated our focus down to one common denominator. That's where all our focus goes, is to eliminating one common denominator, and that is inconvenience. It may sound overly simple, but inconvenience is the number one barrier, and you can consolidate all, logistics, location, visibility, all that into convenience. As farmers and producers, I don't think we sometimes forget how inconvenient we are just by the very nature of what we're doing, right? Our farms are located outside the cities, away from the people. They're not visible. They're not very accessible. I was just thinking through, what does the average customer, when they find a farm that produces grass-fed beef, what kind of hoops are they having to jump through? Usually, they'll call you on the phone. They'll want, maybe some grass-fed beef. You say, "Oh, great! I have I have 5 beef going in this fall. I can send you this sign-up list. You can fill it out, send us a deposit back, and we'll let you know when these beef are ready to go in for processing." And I go, "Oh, okay, all right. And by the way, you'll have to call our processor, give them your cutting instructions, and it's sold by the hanging weight. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. There's going to be a processing fee on top of that. By the way, our processor is 40 miles south of town. You'll have to drive all the way there and get it. And when it's ready, they will call you, and by golly, you better go pick it up quick because they have limited freezer space." And then if we manage to sell them beef, what about the other proteins? What about chicken? Oh, we have different batches of chicken throughout the year, and you can sign up on a separate form with a separate deposit, and we're sold out this spring, but we're taking orders for whatever summer. It's ridiculous. We don't realize, and we as farmers we kind of have this expectation. Well, there's it's good food. It's going to be inconvenient. Well, I think we can do better. We've as we looked at making our products more convenient, making our business more convenient, we've kind of thought of convenience on a three-legged stool. The first aspect we focus on is visibility. Write all these down as we go. Visibility. Like I say, the very nature of farms, we're not located near customers. I hear from farms all the time that we're producing a great product, nobody knows we exist. Now, as marketers, direct marketers, a lot of times we think, to overcome this visibility barrier, we turn to farmers markets. That's a way to get visibility. We have found that because everyone thinks of those first, those tend to be a little bit saturated, and it's easy to get maybe a little discouraged when we're pursuing those markets. I know for us it was that way. I was reading a couple years ago in Stockman, and if you don't get that publication, I recommend you do. Allen Nation's research was showing that 80% of consumers that are looking for pasture-based foods are turning to the internet first. Even to find a local source, turning to the internet first. 80%. How many of us in here that are direct marketing are putting 80%, at least 80% of our efforts channeling visibility in that medium? So what we have found is over here you have a very tech-savvy consumer. What was the age group, Alan? It was 20 to 40 something, but it's a very tech-savvy consumer, progressive consumer. And over here we have us producers. We're busy. We're hands-on. We're not, tweeting all day long, right? But our customers are. So there's a huge opportunity gap here, is what we have found. So that's where we focus most of our efforts. We put a lot of resources into our website. It's paid off over the years. The amount of visibility, I think, competes with having your product in a big retail store, chain store. This graph shows you the analytics of our website traffic within a 1-year time period. We get about 100,000 visitors through that website, and 80% of them are within our market area. That's what's so cool about the internet, is we can target geographical areas with the internet. So if you look at the amount of time that each visitor is spending on the website, again, we put a lot of resources on the website, a lot of content, video, pictures, bios about the staff, the team. But so each visitor is spending an average of 5 minutes. That means some are spending 45 minutes, some are spending 45 seconds. But the average is 5. times that by the number of visitors, in a year, our website is marketing over 9,000 customer marketing hours. So basically, think about the fact, how much would you have to pay somebody to stand at a farmer's market or wherever to hand out a brochure and talk to people about your farm? 9,000 hours a year. The visibility has really blown us away. And I mentioned most of these are within our area. You can see that we're in Indiana there, so most of our traffic's coming from Indiana. And we can drive traffic to our website several different ways. Okay, we get working with some other farms. A lot of times we think, well, once we get a website up, that's done. You're done, right? No, what we have found is our website does a great job at marketing our products, but we have to market our website. Okay, so we can do that a couple different ways. There's search engine optimization, so optimizing your site. So if someone searches grass-fed beef Lansing, you come up higher in search results. We can look at link building. There's a lot of local food directories now. You can get your Eat Wild is one of them, one of the best, really. But as you get your marketing engine online going, we have found the most effective means is content marketing. Okay, this is where we're not marketing our products, but we're marketing the benefits or valuable information about something of value. And I thought I'd share an example from last week, actually. So I was out in the pasture. One of my brothers was moving we're experimenting this year with a mobile hoop house that's four-season production for the laying hens. So we get 1,000 laying hens in this hoop house. Well, we move it every day, and I thought it might be a cool little video to post online on the blog about moving the laying hens. So I took a quick little video. Didn't take much time at all. I uploaded it to YouTube, got back in the office, and created a quick little blog post. Didn't take more than 5 minutes to make all that happen. So, one blog post, and the next morning, okay, it doesn't do a whole lot just to put a blog post on the website. We have to leverage it. The next morning, I sent out a newsletter. So we have about 6,000 subscribers on our e-newsletter. We sent that out to everybody. It didn't take much time at all, and there's a lot of services. MailChimp is what we use for email marketing. So we put the video in the newsletter, linked to the blog. We also put it on Facebook. Put that same video on Facebook. Within a 24-hour period of doing that, we reached well over 6,000 Facebook users. Once that newsletter went out, over 1,400 newsletter subscribers read it. It had 700 views on YouTube. As a result, it sent 800 visitors to the website. Again, this is a 24-hour period. Over 3,200 page views, 308 items sold for a total of $4,000. One blog post, one day. That's content marketing. And it shows you what consumers are interested in, too. They're interested in learning about the farm. Over 700 of our customers or potential customers got to see how we move our laying hens to fresh pasture on a daily basis. Just because you make yourself visible doesn't mean you're convenient yet. Someone said logistics or something, location. We have to think about how we make our products convenient and accessible from an accessibility standpoint. So I'm amazed at how many farms I find that are doing direct marketing that happen to be located not far from a big city, yet there's really no convenient point of accessibility. We happen to be located about 15 miles from Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is they have about 250,000 people in Fort Wayne. So we were at the point where, this was years ago, we had 15, 20 customers that were stopping by the farmhouse and buying eggs from the front door of the farmhouse. And it got to the point where we had enough customers, it just wasn't working out too well. They'd stop by, maybe we weren't home, so we put a small on-farm store. Actually, this is an upgraded store. We had a much smaller one, a 10 by 12 garden shack. Put a refrigerator in there with the eggs. Put a couple freezers in there since we had the meat product. Really didn't think much of it. we didn't realize how we lacked a point of accessibility to our customers. We had about $3,500 invested in this little store. I mean, it was cheap. Someone gave the garden shed to us. Within just a couple of months, that $3,500 was paid back. And today, this store still operates on a self-serve basis. There's about 8 freezers in there and a cooler, 2 coolers. Still operates on a self-serve basis, and it gets about 10 customers a day that come out and visit. They spend an average of about $100 per visit. So it's this is like a grass-fed vending machine right on our farm. Well over $250,000 of product direct marketed from the farm in a very high value but low cost way to do it. It's scale neutral. It doesn't matter if 1 customer comes or 20 customers come. Our costs are the same. And this is we don't live on a busy road. Everybody thinks, well, I'm not going to put a store out unless I have a busy road. We don't live on a busy road. Okay, these are customers that are finding us on the internet, word of mouth, and they're a very, very specific clientele, and that is why the honor system works. Okay? This is a consumer that wants to trust someone, and someone we can trust as well. So, combination of the internet exposure we were getting, this is when we first put our store up 8 years ago or more, we had customers that were driving from cities like Chicago and Indianapolis, driving 180 miles one way, and they'd bring their coolers and they'd load up at this little store. Those initial customers, we had more and more of them coming. Those initial customers asked us if we would be interested in working with them to start remote pickup points in the areas they were coming from. And so that launched this idea of the buying club network. And many other farms at that time, Joel Salatin was developing his buying club right about that same time. But it just organically happened for us. So what we're doing now is using the website to take pre-orders. Okay, using the website to get that exposure and visibility within our market area and driving distance. We use the website to capture the sales online. And then we just, compared to a farmer's market, we were still doing farmer's markets when we first launched our buying clubs. We take the pre-orders, pack them up, put them in the truck, nothing's speculated. The truck goes out full and comes back empty in one day. So at this time when we were first starting these buying clubs, we were spending, an afternoon at farmers markets, loading up coolers with a bunch of speculated product, not sure what we were going to sell. And we maybe on a good day would sell, I think maybe some days we had $700 in sales, maybe. It's a lot of work. At these buying clubs, very quickly we could find that the truck would go out full with $10,000 or $15,000 worth of product on it. And within a matter of a couple hours, you had customers meeting you at the pickup points, and your job was done. Okay, we talk about with stacked enterprises, we get all down on them because they're so labor intensive. It's how we structure our business models. Okay, farming is no different than any other business. You have to structure your business model to afford the labor, afford the team. So this is a map that shows all of our pickup points that we have right now. The red markers are all of our current pickup locations. I think there's about 30 or 40 altogether. It's interesting, just 4 months ago, we introduced a new feature on our website that allowed anyone who wanted to apply to be a buying club could do so. Those blue markers are everybody that have applied in the last 4 months on our website to launch a buying club. We could literally probably be launching 20 to 30 new buying clubs every year. And this is my point in bringing this up, is the potential that's there. That is the power of accessibility, points of accessibility. Joel Salatin just wrote a great article in Stockman, just this edition here, about how the opportunities there are when we kind of marry these new technologies with these local distribution models. It really is the future, as Joel pointed out. Now, we still have some convenience barriers to overcome. We can be visible and we can be accessible, all right? But again, the nature of what we're doing, we're embracing seasonal production. Hopefully we are. It's most cost effective for us, right? And we're producing our pasture-raised laying hens 6 months out of the year. I don't know up here, maybe you don't have quite that many months to deal with, maybe 5. And then with our beef, a lot of times we're either calving in the spring or fall, but either way we have a window. Some of ours are, what they're doing here at MSU, their window is, they're all finished in about 30 days. That's quite a narrow window when it comes to, it's great, they're being very efficient, but when it comes to the availability factor of convenience, customers want to buy this year-round, right? So we have a couple options. We can just stick with our seasonal production patterns. As Jason was talking last night on his production cost charts, he was figuring his opportunity cost, hay cost at, was it $200 a ton, I think. So if you're out of season and you have fat animals that you either don't have appointments for, you don't have customers for, the timing just wasn't right, and you're holding on to those animals and feeding them hay, or just trying to finish them out of season, your cost can be as much as $300 a month for 4 animals. Why did I use 4? Well, because 4 animals easily fit on 1 pallet in the freezer. Our cost to inventory that product instead of in the pasture, our cost in the freezer, and that includes depreciation on our freezer, is $30 a month. So $300 versus $30 a month. Freezer space is the way to go. Now, if we're going to store up that much inventory at one time, we have to be organized and thoughtful about how we're going to put up that inventory, right? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we don't sell anything by the hanging weight anymore. We completely got completely away from that, because when we're doing that model, that freezer beef, freezer meat model, we're having to match the customer at the very time the animal is ready for harvest. And we're dealing with all the custom instructions. We switched years ago to a prepackaged frozen bundling system. And that really revolutionized more. We did it just for a simple purpose of ease of inventory management. We actually thought it was going to be a detriment because customers wouldn't be able to customize their instructions anymore. Well, we found over time, as we looked at those instructions, almost all of them were always the same anyways. They always went with almost 90% of them went with our standard, recommended cutting instructions. So we switched these bundles. Everything was pre-priced. There was no variable in price. There was no variability in weight. There was no hanging weight to worry about and explain to the customer. And best of all, we had these bundles on pallets in the freezer. Someone could come to us any day out of the year, and we always had product. We always had product. And so we do this with all of our proteins. Beef, pork, lamb, and we even have a flock bundle. And we make this really simple, okay? There's only one formulated box per protein. That means the building block for the beef is the eighth of beef box, all right? And our processor, Byron Center Meats here in Michigan, they build these bundles for us at the processor. So our labor, it's all taken care of. The Byron Center's packing it once already. They're willing to pack it the way we want to. And one important aspect, I don't want to forget this, is if you're going to store product for longer periods of time, it has to be processed, obviously, with some good package integrity. But so we just have 1/8 of beef. We have pallets of these 1/8 of beef. When somebody orders a quarter, they get 4. Whole beef, they get 8. Very, very simple. It works the same way with all the proteins. With marketing, we can get so bogged down. I encourage you to think about marketing from just overcoming that single barrier of inconvenience. And think about it in these 3 different ways. That's where we put all of our focus. Now, this came up yesterday, I know, at during some of the farm tours, and it comes up all the time when talking to people, is how do we think about building that team? And we talk about labor being a barrier. I mean, we can get our production models down. We can even get our marketing models down. But if we don't have a team on the bus with us, we don't really have a business. Who was it? Jim Collins, trying to remember his book, but Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus and in the right seats. That has been crucial for us on our farming operation. We have a saying we go by: know what you don't know, and know who knows what you don't. Kind of confusing, isn't it? I think it was 2 years ago at the exchange. I don't know when it came up, but we were talking about the fact that there are 3 skill sets that any viable, successful business must have. I'm going to name those 3, but I encourage you to think about these 3 in the context of your farming operation, your business, and take inventory of where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. Capitalize on your strengths and fill in where the weaknesses are. The 3 types of skill sets I think we talked about were production. We have to have a product or service. Any business has to. And then we have to have our financial piece, our accountant, our management would fall into that. Strategery, we have to have that number cruncher component. And we have to have our marketing, the people person, the delivery driver, customer service. Without all 3, we really don't have a business. And if we don't have a business, we're not going to be able to afford to hire the help. If we don't have a viable, scalable business, we'll never be able to afford the help we need. I try to encourage farms when they say that labor is their limiting bottleneck. As farms, we're not any different than any other business out there. We have to have viable business models so we can afford to pay the employees we need. It's not any different. So you have to ask yourself, is it a business model issue, or this could be a scaling issue? There has to be a certain amount of scale as well. And just like any other business, no matter where you're getting your team, where you're getting your employees, your human resources, you may have to. It was interesting watching John Nelson's presentation last night. I mean, we identified with that presentation because it takes years of going sometimes in the wrong direction. There's a lot of learning involved, and there's just an element of scale as well. Now, let's talk about building the team with family for a second here. Family businesses are incredibly dynamic, and anywhere we go, if I've heard it one time, I've heard it 1,000 times. If I just had 7 sons, my problems would be gone. And I hear it we hear it at conferences, I hear it from next door neighbor, and usually I kindly try to walk them through the logic, and I ask, well, how many kids do you have? Oh, I've got 3 or 4 or 2. And I said, well, how many of those are involved? Oh, they're too busy, or, a lot of times it's none. I don't say this, but I think, well, what makes you think if you just had 3 or 4 more, they'd all magically be involved? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way for us either. It's very dynamic. Something that I've reflected on as growing up, something my parents were very intentional. They really had a vision. They wanted us to have the opportunity and choice to be involved in the farming operation. You might ask yourself, are you fostering an entrepreneurial spirit, either in the people around you, the people you want on your team, whether that's your kids or anybody you want involved? I can remember, Blake and I probably weren't any older than 10 or 11 years old, 10 or 12. This is when we had the confinement hogs. Every morning, Dad, before school and in the summer, before school it would be dark, it was cold in the winter, he'd wake us up in the morning, at least 6 o'clock, and we'd go out and we'd do chores for a couple hours with him. And it was grueling. I didn't like it. It was early, it was cold, but instead of paying us a wage, an hourly wage, Dad decided to give us our own breeding stock. We'd start off with one sow. And in exchange for continuing to help, he would feed the livestock for us, and they'd reproduce, and we'd have little pigs, and he'd finish them for us as we continue to help, and then he'd take them on the trailer to the Tyson buying station, and Tyson would write a check to my name personally, to Blake's name personally, and that had a profound impact. I can't remember, by 13 or 14, I was writing a check to the IRS for taxes already. I had a little checkbook account. That really had a profound impact, I know, on myself, and you could argue that my dad was probably overpaying us. But looking back, I know what he was doing. He was making an investment. He was making an investment. Sometimes it's disheartening to see whether the kids are interested or not in the farming operation. There are so many elements of John brought it up last night. It truly is a lifestyle. Okay, we want to make changes on our farm and pioneer some new things, but somehow we think maybe our lifestyles, don't have to change at all. Talking to other farms, a lot of times, where our kids are just busy. They're busy with sports. Nothing wrong with sports. There's all kinds of things that we have found that can just be downright barriers to even allowing our families to be involved. Another aspect of this is how we leverage college education. I picked up Successful Farmer, a very conventional magazine the other day, and I think it was page 3. I saw that 700 new farmers or beginning farmers were surveyed, and 83% said that college loans were a major barrier for them to even be able to think about entering the farming business. And I bring this up because with Stacked Enterprises, we have a very unique opportunity for our kids to start getting involved at a younger age. Okay? So for my brothers, some of my brothers and I, we had viable farming operations ready to join and get started with right out of high school. And so instead of spending $80,000 right out of the gate on a college education, and a lot of times when we think about our cost of college, we don't think about the opportunity cost. How much money could you make in 4 years? $30,000 a year plus the $80,000 in tuition. There's a $200,000 total cost when you think about opportunity cost. So what we did is started businesses, and like one of my brothers now is working his way through college. He's working almost full-time with the business and taking a slower pace through college because we have this objective of our families being involved, but sometimes the path we take just creates all kinds of barriers. I mean, who do you know that gets out of college with a bunch of college debt and starts a brand new business? It just doesn't happen. So we just need to think about that. Leverage things differently. Get creative. Get innovative. It's really made a difference for our family. And in closing here, I want to talk about the fact that none of this is easy. I mean, it's a simple business model, but nothing's easy about it. It took us a long time to get through the learning curve phase. As a matter of fact, if you read a lot of industry experts that watch new emerging industries will tell us that a new business starting within the context of a new industry can take a minimum of 10 years to reach viability. Now, fortunately, we have an industry that's progressing. Hopefully, it took us every bit of 10 years to reach viability. But I think we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to make some changes on our farm, it's going to take some sacrifices. It's going to take getting through some learning curves. What's going to bring you through those? For us, it wasn't resources. We were broke. For us, it wasn't knowledge. I mean, we didn't have a clue of what we were doing. It was just sheer passion and dedication to the end goal. I think every generation has a unique opportunity. This generation and our next generation has a unique opportunity to fulfill that role of bringing trust back into our food system, and at the same time, reestablishing a connection to the land and having generational sustainability is a part of our family farming operations. We're going to be developing pretty strong relationships, and we want them to be long-term relationships with producers. So we have affidavits in place that we sign, but at the end of the day, we're banking on that relationship and that trust and the handshake. And it's a slower grow that way, but based on what our customers are asking for, that's how we're putting policies in place. It's really a relationship. Okay.